Welcome to the Alcove. I'm Mark Malero. My guest today is Tina Brown. She's a former editor at Vanity Fair and The New Yorker and the author of the recent best-selling biography of the late Princess Diana, The Diana Chronicles. She's the founder and editor-in-chief of the news website The Daily Beast, and it's great to have her here for a conversation with us today. Tina Brown, welcome.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of background on the genesis of the Daily Beast. What was the inspiration for creating this news website?
Well, it began about a year ago now when Barry Diller came to me and said, look, I think that we're all totally oversubscribed with data, with information, with material, and we just don't know how to sort through it. And he said, even though there are many aggregator websites out there, I feel I'd like to have a guiding sensibility that takes me through it and tells me like the group of things I need to read and see and hear and do it with some attitude so I can really become involved. And I thought it was a great idea, and I was in the middle of writing my book at the time on the Princess Diana, the Diana Chronicles, and I said, look, it's not a good time, I'm trying to finish this. But he came back to me, and I said, okay, I'll give it a go. Let's just spend 6 months where I do a kind of dummy, and then if you like it, great, and maybe you'll green light it, but if I don't want to do it, we're okay, we're all quit. So I spent 6 months kind of working up a dummy, and at the end of that time, he loved it, and I found I loved doing it, so we launched.
It's interesting, too, because you've said, I think it was with Howie Kurtz on CNN, you had said that it's not only bipartisan, but it's actually polypartisan. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the philosophy of all these different points of view.
Well, what I've always believed in, I have no bias except unless it's interesting. My bias towards, is it interesting, is it provocative, is it amusing? I don't care if it comes from right, left, middle, wherever globally. I am just really interested in voices that have something new to say that goes against received wisdom or that breaks news. Those are the two criterions. It's like, what have you got that I don't know? And I've always really assigned that way. And so we have, on the one hand, we choose 10 stories a day which we feel are the most provocative, interesting, and entertaining, which is like an alternative front page, if you will, to the rest of the news media. It comes from everywhere, London Guardian, the India Times. I mean, we have the global front page. And then the rest of the stuff on the website is just 10 or 12 things that I think are entertaining and provocative from the people I know, the writers I know, things that I've assigned in response to the news.
One thing that's interesting, I think it was in the New York Times, it said that you have an over 30-year friendship with Arianna Huffington.
Yes.
And many have, tried to make it seem that there's some sort of competition between you, that you're each on, one separate coast, each with a news website. What is that relationship like, and how has it sort of evolved over the years?
Oh, well, we've always been friends. I mean, our kids like each other. We dated some of the same guys in London. I knew Arianna in London. I knew her in New York. I know her in LA. I know her now. We're just very old friends. And in fact, my husband published her first book when he was editor of the Sunday Times of London. It went on like this for years. So we're really good friends. And actually, the online world is much less of a kind of dog-eats-dog world. It's very interesting. In the world of print or TV, it's much more this kind of ruthless kind of competition between people. I think online, it's much more about relationships, actually, because you want other sites to pick up your links. You want to do those trades. You want to experience that kind of collegiality between the other blogs so that you have, you literally are making up the blogosphere. So it's great for Arianna when we carry links to the Huffington Post, which we do constantly, and it's great for us when Huffington Post picks us up and puts us on their homepage, and that drives a lot of traffic to us. So we have a great sort of, back and forth, and there's room for all.
It's interesting because that same New York Times piece had mentioned that it's not so much about competing personalities between you two, but that you have different notions of publishing. Do you feel that, for instance, with the Huffington Post, they have a certain philosophy, whereas the Daily Beast, it's something completely different?
Well, obviously, I can't speak for what their sort of philosophy is. I know what our philosophy is, which is that we are, as I said, like polypartisan. We don't just see everything through a liberal lens. And also, we're much more, we have a kind of very defined site. I mean, we're a news site for a start. We're only been up a couple of months. And we really are about assigning stories that are just a small batch of stories that we've assigned. And it's not so much a kind of free posting, if you like. I mean, you have to be invited to blog for the Huffington Post, so there's also a selectivity there, of course. But from our site's point of view, we like to kind of basically just choose a bunch of things that really we care about and put those up.
And you've also talked about how much you like the speed, the freshness, the creativity of the online world, especially compared to publications like Vanity Fair and The New Yorker, where you've edited. What is it like for you? Like, what would be sort of a typical workday for you at the Daily Beast?
Well, I'm just loving this new world. I mean, I think I've finally found a medium that sort of matches my own impatience, because I'm a completely sort of on kind of caffeinated individual. I can't help the sort of type A-ness of who I am. Mm-hmm. So the fact that I can get up at 6 o'clock and quickly sort of scan the newspaper headlines, check what's on our site, throw something up that I think came in overnight, which just arrived in my inbox. This is great. Let's put it in the top box. Let's change that headline. Let's add this picture. Let's make that bigger. Let's drop that. I just love all of that. And to have that happening in real time is just wonderful. And then I've got this new rhythm where, I spend between 6 and sort of 8 doing that in my pajamas, drinking my coffee. And then I kind of have a little pause and I think I'm going to give myself a treat now and go out and, actually read my old-fashioned newspapers and have some breakfast at the diner. And I go there with my husband and we sit there and we actually sort of have our breakfast and we chow down the news together. It's really fun. And then I go to work about 10:30.
One thing I'm wondering, your very successful biography of Diana, it's interesting because I've heard that you're doing one of the Clintons.
Yes.
You were a very close friend of the late Princess Diana. Do you know the Clintons in the same way? Are you friends with them?
Well, I wouldn't have called myself a close friend of Diana. I knew her over the years during her life as a princess and, as an editor and so forth, we interacted a lot and I had lunch with her a couple of times and so forth. But the Clintons I've interacted with over the years a lot too, really. I was an editor all through the Clinton White House years and I know both Hillary and the president. I have been at many events with them. I've been to the White House, at their dinners and so forth. And so I think I have a pretty good sense of the Clintons and an ongoing, good relationship with the Clintons, which I think will be a good thing for the book because I think it's developing me a great many relationships in their circle and so forth who are obviously it's going to be a very good inside look at that world, I think.
Would that biography be in some ways as psychological and as much of a social commentary as the Diana Chronicles?
Well, I think, the book is going to be a portrait of the dynamic between the two of them, which is so fascinating and politically and personally. And anything that you write about the Clintons is informed by the fascinating and sort of deep and complicated nature of their relationship. Their love affair, because I regard it as actually a great love affair. I know that is in itself a controversial statement, perhaps, but I personally think these two are deeply involved with each other in a way that's very few people kind of quite understand the nature of unless they've seen them together at sort of quiet moments. So that's, to me, tremendously interesting in a sense, not just their relationship, but how other people interpret it and often misperceive it. And how, of course, it has had its moments of tremendous pain and betrayal and reconciliation, and it's all been played out on the most enormous giant stage. So it's endlessly fascinating.
Right. And it's interesting because I remember from the Diana Chronicles you talked about with Diana that there's a small club of celebrities who have such fame that in some ways, when you think of their faces or even their heads, they almost seem larger than life. Does that, now, I don't know how literal you meant it, but how would that apply to the Clintons?
Very much so.
Yes?
Big heads there, very big heads.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean, it's just a bizarre thing. The more people are looked at, the larger their heads become. I have this theory of life. If you look at, I knew Jackie Kennedy, and she just seemed to be like one huge head on a very thin body because people had looked at her for so many years that it was like your whole face expands. So I know it's an optical illusion, but
sure.
It's one that people seem to always find that very sort of beguiling in my book that I wrote that about Diana. But it's true. You just get bigger from being looked at.
Do you think the same sort of celebrity applies with Obama? How do you look at him?
I think Obama is a giant, superstar, again, of the dimensions, which we haven't seen. There've only been about 4 or 5 of these global giant superstars. Elvis, Jackie, JFK, Diana. And I think Obama absolutely is in that category. I think that he is in that giant, global, resonant superstar for all eternity. It seems to me that he's absolutely reached that already.
Yeah. Do you have any predictions or any sort of idea of what kind of a president he'll be? Do you think you might eventually want to do a biography on him, for instance?
I hadn't even thought of that. I think the truth is that the best book on Obama will be written again by Obama because the first 2 have been so good.
Yeah.
That's it. What's interesting about Obama is he's probably the best writer as president we've had since Lincoln. He's a really good literary writer. If he wasn't president, you'd be reading his books and thinking, wow, this guy can really write. That's a new thing for presidents.
You had talked about with Diana that she had an almost fatal attraction for the camera. Some people have certainly accused, the Clintons, maybe Bill Clinton, of that. But people have talked about Obama as not being as needy. Is that something that you perceive as well? He certainly has superstar quality, but do you feel that he has a need for the fame that he has, or that's just something that comes along with what he's doing?
I think he actually probably has in a different kind of way. I mean, I think that most global superstars of enormous magnetism have a kind of understanding and need for the limelight in a certain kind of way. But I think that his is different. I mean, there are some great superstars whose mystery, like a Garbo, if you like, are about withholding. And the thing about Obama that I think makes him such a superstar is, on the one hand, he has this electric smile and this great magic presence. But on the other hand, he does withhold. I mean, I don't think there's anybody really who can feel that they know everything about Obama. And in a way, in an era where sharing equals caring equals, the public has to own you by knowing everything about you, the last great charisma is by not revealing. And I think that Obama has that ability to reveal and not reveal, which really in many ways is what many superstars have. I mean, I think about somebody like a Paul Newman or a Robert Redford,
right,
on that category. They are the superstars who the public feels they know, but they don't really know. You don't really know that much about those guys.
There's a mystery there.
There's mystery, yeah.
Yeah. Getting back to the Daily Beast, I'm wondering, now that you're working in new media, what do you think the future is of the old media? I mean, everybody sort of prognosticated the death of newspapers and these kinds of things, but because you worked in magazines, what are magazines going to do in the next 10 or 20 years?
Well, we're seeing an enormous sort of media shift. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, it's the kind of the age of, absolute change, where everything, whether it's General Motors or the media or publishing, whatever it is all in spin. And I do see a massive kind of revolution happening in print. There will be a great many more closings and foldings and firings and sellings that is going to happen in an era of enormous shakeout. I still believe that the quality brands will survive, perhaps with different cost scales and with different approaches, but I think that they will. I think that the things that are kind of in the middle are the ones that are the most danger. I think that all the sort of mass market will go online, but I think that the quality stuff, I think print will become a more kind of, let's going back to what it used to be like. I mean, in the 20s, Vanity Fair, for instance, sold about 30 or 40,000 copies to the elite, and it had this magic name, but actually it was very small readership. And I think, I'm not suggesting that Vanity Fair would ever go that small, but I definitely think that the name of the game will probably be a smaller number, with a global brand presence, but a kind of elite publishing operation, which is print, and then online probably will take up the rest. So I think that there is going to be a big shakeout, and most of the advertising will move online.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that I was wondering with, glossy magazines like Vanity Fair, taste-making magazines. Is it possible to have that sort of glamour online? That's kind of what I'm wondering, if you think of the quality of...
Well, I think that right now print has the edge on that. But because I think there's something about glossy pages and glossy paper that will always be very attractive to the feel and to the touch, to the smell, all of those things. Right. But I think that technology will, and eyeballs, as it were, and sensibility will catch up with that. And I think that you will see gloss and glamour moving online, but not just yet, but it will. Inevitably it has to, because in the end, brands have to follow the audience. I mean, if that's where their numbers are, that's where they're going to be. So people haven't yet figured quite out how to do that, but they will.
Maybe my last question for you would be, to those that are watching this right now and have not been on the Daily Beast website, what would be sort of a good intro to it, in terms of, you talked about it being polypartisan, who would be a couple of featured writers that would kind of give somebody a taste of what the Daily Beast is all
about? Well, the Daily Beast, I mean, we have a lot of attitude and a lot of fun every day with the news, and we respond to it with a lot of irreverence. I mean, we had a wonderful piece. Christopher Buckley is one of our writers who wrote the novel, Thank You for Smoking. He's done a bunch of wonderful pieces. He writes for us weekly. Tucker Carlson writes political commentary for us. We have terrific pieces on the site every week from Peter Beinart, who's another terrific political writer. We have a lot of politics. We also do a lot of entertainment. I write a column. We respond as much to the culture. We have a great piece, for instance, wonderful interview with Emma Thompson about whether old is the new sexy. It's a site that really is about tapping into the zeitgeist and giving you, I mean, if it's the high politics season, you're going to get red hot politics. If it's the Oscar season, you're going to get the red hot Oscar stuff. If it's, the Emmys, you're going to hear about television. The great thing about us actually is that we're not wedded to one topic, but we move where the zeitgeist moves, so that we have a bunch of writers who stand ready to respond and make the news wherever it is. And we do have also some very witty people on the staff who give you every day a sampling of the news with a kind of provocation and an attitude, and a lot of video too, which is wonderful. I mean, it's just great when you know that, Condoleezza Rice was playing the piano with the Queen, to be able to throw it up immediately on the side, or listen to the audio tapes of Nixon, and we've got that as soon as it breaks, but with a spin, with a new piece to it.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.